The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched high above Captain Han Jiwoo's head. She stood alone in the center of a wide circle marked on the polished floor. Around her, rising in curved tiers like an ancient amphitheater, sat representatives from 47 different alien species. Their eyes, whether 2 or 6 or 12, all fixed on her with the same expression: disgust. Jiwoo kept her hands clasped behind her back. She wore her dress uniform, dark blue with silver buttons. No weapons, no guards. Just one human woman standing before the combined power of galactic civilization. The air smelled strange here, filtered and processed to accommodate dozens of different biological needs. It made her nose itch, but she didn't scratch it. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her uncomfortable. Ambassador Velkara rose from her seat. The Savathi diplomat was tall and elegant, with pale purple skin that seemed to shimmer under the chamber's lights. Her robes flowed like water as she moved to the speaking platform. When she began to talk, her voice carried through the chamber with perfect clarity. Translation devices built into the walls converted her words into every language spoken by council members. "We are here today," Velkara said, "to deliver judgment on humanity's third application for council membership. But this hearing serves a greater purpose. We must address the threat that this species poses to civilized space." Jiwoo's jaw tightened slightly, but her face remained calm. She had expected this. Earth's diplomats had warned her. Still, hearing it spoken aloud in this place felt different. Velkara gestured, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber. Images appeared, floating in the air for all to see. Human soldiers in combat, human rescue workers running into burning buildings, human colonists on worlds where the gravity should have crushed them flat, human children laughing in habitats that would kill most species within minutes. "Observe their warfare," Velkara continued. "They do not simply fight. They enjoy it. After battles that leave thousands dead, human soldiers share meals and tell jokes. They bond over shared trauma. They turn horror into camaraderie." More images flickered past. Human ships ramming enemy vessels, human troops charging positions that tactical analysis declared impossible to take, human medics treating wounded enemies even while under fire. "They are psychologically broken," another council member added from his seat. "No stable species behaves this way. They seek danger. They laugh at death. They volunteer for missions with zero chance of survival." A third representative spoke up, her translator giving her voice a mechanical quality. "Our psychologists have studied them extensively. Humans possess something they call spite. They will harm themselves just to prove someone wrong. They will endure suffering simply to show they can. This is not strength. This is madness." The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Jiwoo listened to them list humanity's crimes against common sense. They talked about human explorers who landed on a planet with acid rain just to see if they could survive it. They had. They talked about human engineers who worked in radiation zones that should have killed them in hours. The engineers wore special suits and worked in short shifts, taking turns absorbing doses that would terrify any other species. "They call these worlds death worlds," Velkara said, her voice rising. "And they don't just survive on them. They thrive. They build cities. They raise families. They act as if danger and death are merely inconveniences." The images shifted to show Earth itself. Beautiful blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked peaceful from space. "This is their homeworld," Velkara explained. "It seems lovely, doesn't it? But look closer. The atmosphere contains oxygen at levels that would be toxic to most species. The weather systems generate storms powerful enough to level cities. The tectonic plates shift constantly, causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The oceans contain predators that hunt in packs. The land supports megafauna that can kill a human with one blow." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And humans evolved there. They climbed to the top of the food chain on a world actively trying to kill them. They didn't just survive. They dominated. They eliminated or domesticated every major threat. They bent an entire hostile planet to their will. Now they want to do the same to the galaxy." Jiwoo wanted to argue. She wanted to explain that humans didn't seek to dominate anyone. They just wanted to explore, to learn, to grow. But she had been ordered to remain silent until called upon. So she stood and listened as the council tore apart everything humanity had accomplished. They discussed human literature, full of stories about disasters and wars and impossible struggles. They examined human music, which often dealt with themes of loss and pain. They analyzed human art, noting how frequently it depicted suffering and conflict. Even their entertainment reflects their broken nature, one representative said. They create fictional scenarios where their entire species faces extinction. Then they watch these scenarios for enjoyment. They call them disaster movies. What healthy species entertains itself with visions of its own destruction? The testimonies continued for hours. Expert after expert presented evidence of humanity's psychological aberrations. Military analysts showed footage of human tactics that violated every accepted principle of warfare. Sociologists discussed human cultural practices that made no logical sense. Biologists explained how human physiology was over-engineered for survival, packed with redundant systems and excessive adrenaline responses. They are persistence predators, one biologist noted. On their world, humans would chase prey for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They didn't need to be fast or strong. They just needed to never stop. This psychology carries into everything they do. They don't know when to quit. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Velkara approached the center circle where Jiwoo stood. The ambassador looked down at her and Jiwoo met her eyes without flinching. "Captain Han Jiwoo," Velkara said formally, "you have heard the testimony. You have seen the evidence. The Council's verdict is unanimous. Humanity is denied membership. Furthermore, effective immediately, your species is restricted to your home system. Council patrol fleets will enforce a quarantine. Humanity is to remain contained until such time as you prove you are no longer a threat to galactic peace." Jiwoo felt anger flash through her, hot and sharp, contained, like animals in a cage, like a disease to be isolated. But she pushed the anger down, buried it deep. Getting emotional now would only confirm what they believed about humans. "The Council recognizes that you were granted permission to speak in your defense," Velkara continued. "If you have anything to say it now." This was the moment. Jiwoo had prepared a speech. Earth's best diplomats had written it for her. Pages of carefully crafted arguments about human achievements, about the value humanity could bring to the Council, about basic rights and freedoms. She had memorized every word. She ignored all of it. Instead, Jiwoo smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile a predator gives when it knows something its prey doesn't. She saw several council members lean back in their seats. Instinctive reactions to a threat display they recognized on some primal level. "You're right," Jiwoo said quietly, her voice carrying through the chamber's excellent acoustics. "We are all those things you described, stubborn, reckless, too comfortable with danger. Psychologically unusual by your standards." She paused, letting them absorb that admission. "But respectfully, counselors, you haven't seen anything yet." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions and objections. Velkara demanded clarification. But Jiwoo just stood there, still smiling, saying nothing more. Let them wonder. Let them worry. They wanted to see humans as monsters? Fine. But they should remember that monsters are dangerous when caged. Security escorts arrived to lead her away. As she walked toward the exit, Jiwoo kept her head high. Behind her, the council continued arguing, their voices rising in pitch and volume. They were scared. Good. Fear meant respect, even if they wouldn't admit it. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Jiwoo spent most of it writing her report. When she finally stood before Earth's planetary council, she delivered the news simply and clearly. The galaxy had rejected humanity. They would be quarantined, cut off from the stars they had worked so hard to reach. The response surprised her. Some leaders argued for compliance. Some wanted to fight. But President Park Hyeron, head of Earth's unified government, simply nodded and said, "So they want to see what humans do when we're told we can't do something. All right then, let's show them." 5 years passed behind the quarantine barrier. The Council's patrol fleets maintained their positions at the edge of human space, monitoring every transmission, tracking every ship movement. Their orders were clear: keep humanity contained. Watch them. Make sure they didn't become a bigger threat. What they watched confused them more with each passing year. Admiral Park Hyeron stood on the observation deck of the orbital station Armstrong, looking out at the construction yards below. Massive structures took shape in the darkness of space, lit by thousands of welding torches and work lights, not warships as the Council observers had expected. Infrastructure, habitats, mining platforms, research stations. "Status report," Hyeron said to her aide. Lieutenant Nam Sora pulled up a holographic display. "The asteroid belt mining operations are ahead of schedule. We've established 43 permanent facilities. Resource extraction has increased by 300% since the quarantine began. Yeren nodded, watching a construction team maneuver a habitat module into position. The module was designed for deployment on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The surface temperature there stayed around -180 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere was mostly nitrogen with methane rain. It should have been impossible to colonize. How many volunteers for the Titan settlement? Yeren asked. Over 10,000 applicants for the first 100 slots, Sora replied. People want to go. They're excited about it. That was the thing the council didn't understand. Humans didn't see hostile environments as barriers. They saw them as challenges. They saw them as opportunities to prove what they could do. Construction Captain Lee Donghyun supervised the mining operation on Psyche. An asteroid made almost entirely of metal. The radiation levels would kill most species within hours. Humans worked there in rotating shifts, protected by suits that were constantly being improved and upgraded. The work was dangerous. 3 people had died in accidents during the first year. A memorial wall listed their names. The work continued. We're pulling out more platinum in a week than Earth mined in a decade before the quarantine, Donghyun told his crew during a shift briefing. The council thinks they're punishing us. Instead, they gave us time to build. No politics. No committees debating every decision. Just us and the work. His crew cheered. They understood. Being cut off from galactic society stung, yes, but it also freed humanity to focus entirely on survival and growth. No more trying to prove themselves worthy to aliens who had already decided to fear them. Now they just proved things to themselves. On Venus, engineering teams implemented a decades-old terraforming plan that other species had dismissed as insane. The planet's surface was hot enough to melt lead. The atmospheric pressure could crush submarines. The clouds were sulfuric acid. Perfect place for humans to practice extreme environmental modification. Dr. Choi Minha led the scientific coordination from Earth. She was a xenoanthropologist, someone who studied alien cultures, but there weren't any aliens to study anymore. So she shifted her focus. If the council wanted to observe humanity, she would give them something worth observing. We're opening cultural exchange programs, she announced during a global broadcast. Any council observer who wants to visit Earth or our colonies is welcome. We have nothing to hide. The council largely ignored the invitation. Their military observers maintained their distant watch. But a few aliens driven by genuine curiosity accepted. They came to Earth. They toured human cities. They visited the colonies. One Sivathi observer, a young diplomat named Kelrin, filed a report that made its way through council channels. Yeren read it with satisfaction. I visited a human colony on Callisto, Kelrin had written. The environment is hostile beyond measure. Yet the humans have built not just shelter but homes. They have gardens growing under artificial lights. They have schools for their children. They have art galleries and concert halls. When I asked why they needed such things on a frozen moon, they looked at me as if I had asked why they needed air. Beauty and culture are not luxuries to humans. They are necessities. Another observer spent time on Mars, where human settlements now housed over 1 million people. The thin atmosphere and harsh conditions that had killed so many early colonists were now just part of daily life. Children born on Mars had never seen Earth, yet they considered themselves fully human. They sing, the observer's report noted. I heard them singing while working in the greenhouses, while repairing equipment, while walking through the habitat corridors. When I asked about this, they told me songs make the work easier. They make time pass faster. They bind the community together. I do not understand it, but I cannot deny it works. These people are happy in a place that should break their spirits. The most disturbing report came from an observer who visited the human settlement on Europa. The moon's surface was locked in ice kilometers thick, covering an ocean of liquid water heated by tidal forces. Humans had bored through the ice and built a research station in the ocean below. They studied the strange life forms that existed in that dark, cold water. They swam there for recreation. I watched human children playing in that freezing ocean, the observer wrote. They wore specialized suits, but still. They were playing. They had races. They had games. They laughed. I asked their parents if they were concerned about the danger, and the parents just smiled. They said, life is dangerous. We don't hide from it. These reports disturbed the council, but not enough to reconsider the quarantine. If anything, they reinforced the decision. Humans were adapting to environments that should kill them. They were growing stronger. They were spreading throughout their solar system like a species that refused to accept any limitations. What really worried the Council's military observers was how efficiently humans worked. Without bureaucracy and with a unified purpose, human industrial capacity had exploded. They built faster than any Council race. They solved engineering problems that had stumped alien scientists for centuries. They did it with creativity, determination, and a willingness to try solutions that seemed crazy until they worked. Lieutenant Kang Eunji exemplified this approach. She was a fighter pilot, but with no one to fight, she retrained as a test pilot. She flew experimental ships designed to push the boundaries of what was possible. Many of the designs came from human engineers who approached problems without being limited by what the Council said couldn't be done. This ship uses a propulsion system based on controlled fusion pulses, Eunji explained to a documentary crew. Council regulations classify it as too dangerous for regular use. But we're not Council members, so we built it anyway. It's 3 times faster than anything they fly. When asked if she was scared flying such an untested ship, Eunji had laughed. Of course I'm scared. Fear keeps you sharp, but being scared never stopped any human from doing what needed to be done. That attitude permeated human society during the quarantine years. Schools taught children about the challenges their species faced, but they didn't teach fear. They taught perseverance. They taught creativity. They taught that when someone says something is impossible, that's just the opening of a challenge. Human literature and entertainment reflected this mindset. The most popular stories were about overcoming impossible odds. Songs celebrated endurance and defiance. Artists created works that captured the strange beauty of hostile environments. A painting of Jupiter's Great Red Storm, done by an artist who had sketched it from a ship flying through the upper atmosphere, sold for millions. Not because it was pretty, but because it represented humanity's refusal to be kept from experiencing the universe firsthand. The Council observers noted all of this in their reports. They documented human population growth, resource extraction rates, technological advancement, and cultural development. The numbers painted a picture of a species that was not being diminished by isolation. They were thriving. One observer, a security analyst from the Havani Union, wrote a report that his superiors tried to suppress. "We have made a serious miscalculation," it read. "We assumed containment would limit human growth. Instead, we have given them a common enemy, us, and a common purpose, proving us wrong. We have done what nothing in their own history could fully accomplish. We have united them." Herein read that report too, obtained through intelligence channels that proved humans were still quite capable of espionage despite the quarantine. She smiled when she finished it. The analyst was right. The Council had given humanity the greatest gift possible, a clear external threat in time to prepare. "How much longer do you think we have?" Sora asked her one day. Hiren looked out at the construction yards, at the ships being built, at the infrastructure growing throughout the solar system. "Until they need us," she said simply. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. Sooner or later, they'll face something their rules and regulations can't handle. That's when they'll remember us. And when they do," Sora pressed. Hiren's smile matched the one Jiwoo had given the Council 5 years earlier. "Then we show them what humanity can really do." The distress call reached Council space on a Tuesday morning, Council Standard Time. It came from the Outer Rim, a region of independent colonies that existed outside Council protection but maintained trade relationships. The message was brief and terrifying. "Something is attacking us. We don't know what it is. It's not biological. It's not anything we've seen before. Please send help. Please send..." The transmission cut off. Council security dispatched a scout ship to investigate. It found nothing. The colony was gone. Not destroyed in the traditional sense, just gone. Buildings torn apart at the molecular level. The ground itself stripped away. Even the atmosphere had been partially harvested. 8,000 colonists had simply ceased to exist. Within weeks, 3 more colonies vanished the same way. Then 7 more. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Something was moving through the Outer Rim, consuming everything in its path. The refugees came next. Ships packed with survivors fled ahead of the destruction. Their stories were consistent and nightmarish. Machines, swarms of them, each one about the size of a human hand, working in coordinated groups. They took apart everything they touched and used the materials to build more machines. The swarms grew exponentially, doubling every few hours. "We tried to fight them," one survivor told Council investigators. We used plasma weapons, kinetic weapons, everything we had. It didn't matter. The machines learned. They adapted. By the second engagement, our weapons barely slowed them down. By the third, they were useless. The Council convened an emergency session. Military commanders presented their analysis. The machines were self-replicating constructs, probably created by some ancient civilization as weapons or mining tools. Something had activated them. Now they followed their original programming. Consume and replicate. They had no intelligence in the traditional sense, but they had something more dangerous. They learned from every encounter. The Council mobilized its peacekeeping fleets, 3 full battle groups representing the combined military might of a dozen species, moved to engage the machine swarms in the Tanis sector. The battle was broadcast live to Council headquarters. Military observers watched with confidence. The peacekeeping fleets were well-trained, well-equipped, and numerous. The machines, while dangerous to undefended colonies, surely couldn't stand against organized military force. The confidence lasted about 20 minutes. The first wave of engagement went well. Council ships opened fire from maximum range. Energy weapons tore through machine swarms. Kinetic weapons scattered them. Losses were acceptable. Victory seemed assured. Then the machines adapted. The second wave encountered machines that reflected energy weapons. Mirrors formed from consumed materials scattered laser fire harmlessly. The third wave found machines that absorbed kinetic impacts, using the energy to power their replication. The fourth wave faced machines that moved in patterns specifically designed to confuse Council targeting systems. Within 6 hours, the entire engagement turned into a massacre. Council ships retreated in disorder. The machines pursued, learning with each passing moment. They identified weak points in ship hulls. They discovered how to disrupt shield generators. They found ways to target life support systems specifically, killing crews while leaving ships relatively intact for harvesting. One battleship, the pride of the Sivathi fleet, was completely disassembled in 43 minutes. The machines worked like a swarm of mechanical ants, each one removing a tiny piece, all of them working in perfect coordination. The crew's distress calls were still transmitting when the ship's power core was dismantled. By the time the surviving Council ships made it back to safe space, 3 entire fleets had been destroyed. The machines continued their advance toward Council core worlds, growing stronger with every engagement, learning from every tactic used against them. The Council chambers filled with panic. Representatives shouted over each other. Military commanders presented increasingly desperate plans. Every simulation showed the same result. Conventional warfare was failing. The machines evolved faster than Council forces could adapt. Within months, maybe weeks, the swarms would reach major population centers. Councillor Resh of the Havana Union stood and called for order. His voice, amplified by the chamber systems, cut through the chaos. "We need to consider all options," he said carefully, "including options we previously rejected." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant. "The humans," someone said. Ambassador Velkara rose from her seat, her purple skin darkening with anger. "Absolutely not. We contained them for good reason. Have you forgotten the reports? Their psychological instability? Their dangerous capabilities? Releasing humanity now would be trading one threat for another." "Can they be worse than extinction?" Resh countered. "The machines will reach Sivath Prime within 3 weeks. Your homeworld, Ambassador. 10 billion souls. Unless we find a way to stop them." Velkara had no response to that. None of them did. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Council forces, fighting by their established doctrines and rules of engagement, could not defeat an enemy that adapted faster than they could innovate. They needed something different, something unpredictable, something that didn't follow the rules. They needed something atrocious. The debate continued for days, but the outcome was inevitable. The machines reached the outer defensive line of Sivath Prime's system. Council defense forces engaged them. The battle lasted 8 hours. The defense forces lost. The machines continued inward. Velkara watched from the Council chambers as her homeworld burned. The machines fell from orbit like metal rain. They hit the surface and began their work. Cities that had stood for thousands of years disappeared within hours. Farmlands were stripped to bedrock. Oceans were drained and processed. By the time she agreed to the proposal, 2 billion of her people were dead. The delegation to Earth consisted of 7 ships. Velkara led it personally. It was the least she could do, she thought. If she was going to beg humanity for help, she would do it face to face. The human patrol ships intercepted them at the edge of the solar system. The council vessels were allowed to pass after brief identification. They flew past the orbital stations, past the massive structures humans had built during their quarantine. Velkara saw a ship launching from Mars, sleek and fast, built with designs that would violate a dozen council safety regulations. She saw mining platforms working asteroids in the belt, pulling out resources at rates that should have been impossible. She saw a human civilization that had not been diminished by isolation. They had been tempered by it. Fleet Commander Han Jiwoo met them at Earth's primary orbital station. She looked older than Velkara remembered. 5 years of managing humanity's response to the quarantine had added lines to her face, but her eyes held the same sharp intelligence, the same predatory awareness. Velkara and the other council delegates were shown to a conference room. It was simple compared to council chambers. Human aesthetics favored function over decoration. Jiwoo sat across from them, 2 human aides standing behind her. One was a young woman Velkara recognized as Nam Sora, now apparently Jiwoo's chief tactical officer. "Ambassador Velkara," Jiwoo said calmly. "You look tired. Would you like refreshments before we begin?" The courtesy felt like mockery, but Velkara knew it wasn't. Humans were genuinely hospitable, even to people who had wronged them. It was one of their stranger traits. "We don't have time for pleasantries," Velkara said. "You must have heard about the machine crisis." "We've been monitoring council transmissions," Jiwoo confirmed. "The situation looks bad. It's worse than bad. It's extinction. Our forces can't stop them. They adapt too quickly. Every tactic we use becomes useless after one engagement." Velkara paused, forcing herself to say the words. "We need your help." Jiwoo leaned back in her chair, studying the council delegation. "That must have been difficult to say." "It was necessary to say," Velkara replied. "I am asking, on behalf of the entire council, for humanity to join the defense against the machine threat. In return, we will grant immediate full council membership. We will provide resources, technology, territory, whatever you want. Name your price." The other delegates nodded agreement. They were authorized to offer anything. Pride and regulations didn't matter when facing extinction. Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "No promises necessary, Ambassador. When someone's in trouble, humans help. That's what we do. That's what your atrocious species does." She smiled then, not the predator's smile from 5 years ago. Something different, something Velkara recognized from the reports, the kind of smile humans gave when they were about to do something dangerous and stupid and necessary. "We'll mobilize immediately," Jiwoo continued. "But understand this, we fight our way, not yours. We don't follow council rules of engagement. We don't limit ourselves to approved tactics. We do whatever it takes to win. Can you accept that?" Velkara thought of her burning homeworld. She thought of the billions already dead. She thought of the simulations showing the machines reaching Earth within a year, if nothing changed. "Yes," she said. "We can accept that." Jiwoo stood, extending her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Velkara took it, feeling the strength in the human's grip. "Then let's go save your galaxy." The joint Human Council fleet assembled at the staging point within 72 hours. To the council officers, this seemed impossible. Their logistics systems required weeks to coordinate fleet movements. Humans simply moved, trusting their people to figure out details during transit. Fleet Commander Han Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the human flagship Determination, studying the tactical displays. Around her ship, arranged in what council observers called an alarmingly loose formation, 40 human vessels held position. They were outnumbered 3-1 by council ships. But Jiwoo knew numbers wouldn't determine this fight. Captain Lee Donghyun commanded the destroyer Indomitable, positioned at the fleet's forward edge. He had volunteered immediately when Jiwoo called for captains willing to fight an unknown enemy. His entire crew had volunteered with him. That was the thing about humans. When things got dangerous, they lined up to help. The council liaison officer on Donghyun's bridge was a Sivathi named Kelrin. He had been one of the observers who visited human colonies during the quarantine. Now he watched human operations with growing concern. "Captain," Kelrin said carefully, "your crew is not following any standard combat preparation protocol. They're playing music. They're telling jokes. One of your weapons officers is eating what I believe you call a sandwich." Donghyun grinned. "Yeah, that's about right. We fight better when we're relaxed." "Relaxed?" Kelrin's translator struggled with his tone. We are about to engage an enemy that has destroyed multiple council fleets. How can you be relaxed? Because being tense doesn't help, Dongyun explained. Look, fear and stress are useful. They keep you alert. But if you let them control you, you make mistakes. So we acknowledge the fear, then we set it aside and do our jobs. Kelrin didn't understand, but he stopped questioning. He would learn soon enough. The machine swarms appeared on sensors exactly when intelligence predicted. Millions of individual contacts moving in coordinated patterns, heading directly for the fleet. Council ships immediately fell into defensive formations, arranging themselves according to tactical doctrine written over centuries of warfare. The human ships did something different. They spread out, each vessel taking an independent position. It looked like chaos to Council observers. It was actually carefully planned chaos. All human ships. Jiwoo's voice came through the fleet channel. Weapons free. Engage at will. Remember, they learn from repetition. Don't give them patterns to study. Stay unpredictable. The first wave of machines reached weapons range. Council ships opened fire with precision volleys, their commanders following proven tactics for fighting swarm enemies. Energy weapons cut through machine clusters. The initial results looked promising. Human ships opened fire in ways that made Council tactical officers physically uncomfortable. The Indomitable fired its main cannons in apparently random patterns. Another ship used its point defense lasers in sweeping arcs instead of targeted bursts. A third ship was firing missiles that seemed to be programmed to fly in spirals rather than straight lines. What are they doing? A Council admiral demanded over the command channel. This violates every principle of efficient fire control. They're being unpredictable, Jiwoo replied calmly. The machines learn from our tactics. If we use standard patterns, they'll adapt within minutes. Random patterns take longer to analyze, she was right. The machines quickly adjusted to Council weapons fire, developing countermeasures. But the human fire patterns kept changing. Every ship used different tactics. Every captain made independent decisions. The machines' learning algorithms struggled with the chaos. Then Dongyun did something that made Kelrin grab his safety harness. The Indomitable accelerated directly toward the thickest concentration of machines. Captain, what are you doing? Kelrin shouted. Improvising, Dongyun said cheerfully. The destroyer plunged into the machine swarm. Its shields absorbed impacts from thousands of small machines trying to attach to the hull. Dongyun let them start trying to take his ship apart. Then when sensors showed enough machines had attached, he vented the ship's entire fuel reserve through emergency ports. The cloud of volatile fuel ignited in a massive explosion. The blast destroyed millions of machines. It also threw the Indomitable tumbling through space, her shields down, her hull scorched black. Emergency evacuation, Dongyun ordered calmly. All hands to escape pods. The crew abandoned ship in perfect order. No panic, no screaming. They had trained for this. Each pod launched with precision timing, streaking away from the dying destroyer. But these weren't normal escape pods. Human engineers had modified them. The pods were actually missiles. As the machines moved to investigate the destroyed ship, the pods detonated. Each one carried a shaped nuclear charge designed to release electromagnetic pulses. The explosions created cascading energy waves that disrupted the machines' coordination systems. Millions more machines went dead, their electronic systems fried. Kelrin watched in shock as rescue ships picked up the escape pods. Dongyun and his entire crew had survived. They had just sacrificed a ship, killed millions of enemy units, and all survived. The tactic made no sense by Council standards. It was brilliant by human standards. That was insane, Kelrin whispered. That was effective, Jiwoo corrected over the command channel. All ships, you saw what the Indomitable did. Adapt the tactic, modify it. Every ship does something different. Keep them guessing. The battle evolved into organized chaos. Human captains tried tactics that would have gotten them court-martialed in Council fleets. They rammed damaged ships into machine concentrations. They used gravity fields to crush machine clusters. One ship flew through a gas giant's upper atmosphere, trailing machines behind it, then ignited the atmospheric gases with her engines. The resulting firestorm destroyed everything caught in it. Combat engineer Nam Sora worked in the Determination's technical bay, analyzing captured machine samples. She had retrieved several dormant units from the battlefield and was studying their code structure. They learned by copying successful behaviors, she explained to Jiwoo over the intercom. They share information across the swarm network. Every tactic we use gets analyzed and distributed to all machines within minutes. Can we exploit that? Jiwoo asked. Maybe. If they learn from us, we can teach them something toxic. Sora's fingers flew across her console. I'm writing a code fragment that looks like an efficiency improvement, but actually introduces errors into their coordination algorithms. If I can get them to copy it, do it, Jiwoo ordered. Sora worked for the next 8 hours, creating a virus disguised as beneficial code. It was delicate work. The machine's analysis systems were sophisticated. They would reject anything obviously harmful. But if she could make the poison look like medicine, hide the corruption inside what appeared to be improvements, they might accept it. She uploaded her creation to a captured machine unit and released it near the swarm. The machine rejoined its cluster, sharing its code with others. The virus spread through the swarm network like a disease. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then machines started making small errors, a targeting calculation off by a fraction, a movement pattern slightly uncoordinated. Multiply those small errors by millions of machines and the effect became dramatic. The swarm's efficiency dropped. Their adaptations came slower. They second-guessed their own programming. It's working, Sora reported. They're doubting themselves. The virus makes them question whether their learned behaviors are actually effective. Human forces pressed the advantage. Ship after ship tried new tactics, each one forcing the machines to adapt, each adaptation potentially carrying Sora's virus deeper into their network. The machines that had seemed unstoppable began to falter. Lieutenant Kang Yoonji led a fighter squadron in strikes against machine formations. Her ships were fast, maneuverable, and flown by pilots who treated combat like an extreme sport. They dove through machine swarms, scattered them with missile barrages, then escaped before the machines could respond effectively. Her wingman was a council pilot, a Hivani named Torash. He flew with rigid precision, following his training exactly. Yoonji flew on instinct, making split-second decisions that looked reckless, but somehow worked. How do you do that? Torash asked after one engagement, his voice shaking with adrenaline. You flew through a gap that was barely larger than your ship. My instrument said it was impossible. Instruments are useful, Yoonji replied, but sometimes you have to trust your gut. My gut said I could make it, so I tried. I was either right or I was going to die very quickly. Turned out I was right. You could have died, Torash protested. Yeah, but I didn't, and that's what matters. Yoonji checked her weapons status. Ready for another run? Torash hesitated only a moment. Then he said, Yes, I'm ready. He was learning. They all were. Council officers watched human tactics and started trying them. Carefully at first, still bound by regulations and doctrine. But gradually, they began to understand. Rules existed to protect people, but sometimes people needed to be willing to risk protection to achieve victory. The battle for the Tanis sector lasted 3 weeks. It was brutal, costly, and unlike anything in Council military history. Human casualties were significant. 30% of the human fleet was destroyed or too damaged to continue fighting. But the machine advance was stopped. For the first time since the crisis began, the enemy was in retreat. Jiwoo stood in the Determination's medical bay, visiting wounded crew members. A young man named Kim Jae-won had lost his arm when his console exploded during battle. He was awake, alert, and angry. I can't believe I'm missing the rest of the fight, Jae-won complained. You did your part, Jiwoo assured him. You kept fire control operational for 3 hours after the primary systems went down. That's why we're still here. Still feels wrong, sitting in medical while everyone else is fighting. Jiwoo smiled. That's very human of you. Rest now. There will be other battles. She didn't say it cheerfully. She knew it was true. The machines were retreating, but they weren't defeated. Intelligence reports indicated they were consolidating, building something big. The final confrontation was still coming. The reconnaissance report arrived 6 days after the victory at Tanis. Commander Nam Tae-hyung read it 3 times before bringing it to Fleet Commander Jiwoo. He found her in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. She looked tired. They all did, Commander, Tae-hyung said quietly. You need to see this, Jiwoo took the datapad and read. Her expression didn't change, but Taehyung saw her grip tighten on the device. The report was simple and terrifying. The machines had retreated to their point of origin, an abandoned shipyard in a dead star system. They were building something. The structure already dwarfed anything in known space and was growing larger every hour. It's a factory, Jiwoo said, a self-replicating construction facility on a stellar scale. The analysis team estimates it can convert an entire star system into machines within a month, Taehyung confirmed. If they activate it and let it spread, it will consume the galaxy within a century. Jiwoo handed back the datapad. We need to destroy it. Every simulation says that's impossible. The facility is protected by the largest concentration of machine forces we've encountered. Any fleet that tries to reach the core will be destroyed before getting close. Taehyung paused. But I have an idea. You're not going to like it. He explained his plan. He was right. She didn't like it. But she couldn't deny it might work. The council convened an emergency meeting. Human and alien commanders gathered in virtual space, their holographic forms arranged around a central display showing the machine facility. The mood was desperate. They had won a battle but were about to lose the war. We could evacuate, one council admiral suggested. Load as many people as possible onto ships and flee to another galaxy. Let the machines have this one. Running just delays the problem, Admiral Park Hire encountered. Eventually, the machines will expand into other galaxies. There's nowhere to run that they won't eventually reach. Ambassador Velkara looked older than her years. The death toll on Sivath Prime had reached 6 billion before survivors were evacuated. She had lost family, friends, her entire previous life. What are you proposing, Admiral? Taehyung brought up a tactical schematic. We don't fight our way to the core. We give them something they can't resist analyzing. Us. Specifically, human culture, psychology, everything that makes us human. While they're trying to understand data that makes no logical sense, a small team infiltrates the facility and plants a singularity charge at the power core. The radiation around the facility would kill any crew within hours. A Havani commander objected. Humans can handle more radiation than most species, Hiron said. We'll use heavy shielding and accept that exposure times will be lethal. The team won't be coming back. The virtual chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. This was a suicide mission. No chance of survival. No possibility of rescue. Just certain death in service of a desperate plan. I'll lead the team, Jiwoo said into the silence. Commander, you don't have to, Velkara began. Yes, I do. 5 years ago, I told the council you hadn't seen anything yet. Time to show you what humans really are. Not just fighters or survivors. We're people who do what needs to be done even when it costs everything. Jiwoo put out a call for volunteers. She needed 50 people. 5,000 humans applied within the first hour. Reading through the applications broke her heart. Engineers, soldiers, scientists, medics, even artists and musicians who wanted to help broadcast human culture to the machines. All of them ready to die. She selected her team carefully. Combat specialists who could fight through whatever defenses they encountered. Engineers who could plant and arm the singularity charge. Technical experts who could maintain the cultural broadcast. And Dr. Choi Minha, who insisted on coming to ensure the cultural data accurately represented humanity. This is a one-way trip, Jiwoo reminded each selected volunteer. I know, each one replied. Some variation of the same response. They knew they came anyway, because that's what humans did. The ship they would use was named Defiance. It was built specifically for this mission. Armored heavily but not armed. It didn't need weapons. It was meant to be bait, not a fighter. Its entire purpose was to get close to the facility while broadcasting everything that made humans human. The cargo hold was filled with data cores containing human history. Music from every culture and era. Literature from ancient epics to modern novels. Scientific theories and artistic masterpieces. Footage of human children laughing. Soldiers crying. People dancing at weddings and mourning at funerals. Everything illogical, emotional, beautiful, and terrible about humanity. Lieutenant Choi Seung-jin was responsible for the cultural broadcast system. He had volunteered immediately, saying his wife would understand. She did. She came to see him off, holding him tight, whispering things Jiwoo didn't try to hear. Private moments before public sacrifice. Engineer Park Ji-on handled the singularity charge. The device was technically illegal by council laws. capable of creating a short-lived black hole that would collapse in on itself, but take everything nearby with it. She had helped design it during the quarantine years, when humans explored every possible weapon they might need someday. If we do this right, Jian explained during the mission briefing, the explosion will be contained by the facility's own structure long enough to collapse the core. The entire factory will implode. The machines in the area will be pulled in with it. And us? Someone asked. We'll be the first ones pulled in. It'll be instant. We won't feel anything. Jiwoo appreciated the lie. They probably would feel something. But it would be brief, and after it was over, none of them would care. The Defiance launched with full ceremony. Every ship in the combined fleet stood at attention. Human and alien crews lined up to salute. Some species didn't have salutes, so they stood silently, showing respect in their own ways. It was the most honor anyone could give to people heading toward certain death. The journey to the facility took 8 days. Jiwoo kept her crew busy, maintaining equipment, reviewing plans, living. Because until the moment they died, they were alive, and life deserved to be lived fully. They played music. Sungjin organized concerts in the ship's small recreation area. People sang, even those who couldn't carry a tune. They told jokes. Jiyeon had a collection of terrible puns that made everyone groan and laugh. They talked about their lives, their families, what they hoped humanity would do after this was over. I hope they remember we chose this, Sungjin said one evening. Nobody forced us. We volunteered because something needed to be done and we could do it. They'll remember, Jiwoo assured him. Humans always remember the ones who go first into the dark. The facility appeared on their sensors like a mechanical moon. The structure was vast beyond comprehension, built from the harvested materials of 3 entire planets. Millions of machines swarmed around it, adding more mass with each passing moment. Beginning cultural broadcast, Sungjin reported, transmitting on all frequencies. The effect was immediate. Machines began moving toward the Defiance, drawn by the strange data. They didn't attack. They surrounded the ship, analyzing, trying to understand. The broadcast was everything alien to their nature. Emotions, art, contradictions. Why did humans create beauty in the face of death? Why did they laugh when they should despair? Why did they help others at cost to themselves? The machine's processing system struggled with data that refused to follow logical patterns. Music that made no mathematical sense but somehow moved the spirit. Poems about feelings that couldn't be quantified. Images of humans doing things that violated survival instincts just to prove they could. While the swarm tried to analyze humanity, Jiwoo's team penetrated the facility. They flew the Defiance directly into a maintenance port, forcing their way through defenses that were distracted by the cultural broadcast. The ship was damaged, taking hits that would have destroyed a vessel with lighter armor, but human engineers had built it tough. It held together long enough. They set down inside the facility's core structure. The radiation levels were already lethal. Jiwoo watched her exposure counter climb into ranges that meant certain death. She had days at most, but she only needed hours. Teams, move out, she ordered. We get one shot at this. The facility's interior was a maze of construction machinery and storage chambers. They fought their way deeper, encountering machines that tried to stop them. Sungjin held a collapsing tunnel long enough for others to pass, crushed under tons of metal. His last transmission was him whistling a cheerful song, defiant to the end. Jiyeon reached a security checkpoint that required a manual override. The system was designed to electrocute anyone who tried. She did it anyway, holding the contacts while thousands of volts coursed through her body. Worth it, she gasped. Her last words as the door opened. One by one, the team fell. Each person bought progress with their life. Each death brought them closer to the core. Jiwoo pushed forward, carrying the singularity device accompanied by 3 remaining crew members. They reached the power core. It was beautiful in a terrible way. A massive fusion reactor that powered the entire facility. Jiyeon had been right about where to place the charge. Jiwoo set it carefully, arming the device with shaking hands. Radiation sickness was setting in. Her vision blurred. She could taste blood. Commander, we need to evacuate, one of her remaining crew said. Jiwoo checked her readings. The machines were adapting. The cultural broadcast was losing effectiveness. They were learning to filter out the noise, to ignore the illogical data. If the team left now, machines might reach the charge before it detonated. Someone needed to stay. Someone needed to make sure. She thought of the council chamber 5 years ago. She thought of how they had looked at her with fear and disgust. She thought of her smile, her promise. You haven't seen anything yet? You three go, Jiwoo ordered. Get back to the ship. That's an order. Commander, go. Someone needs to tell the story. I'll make sure this works. They hesitated, but they obeyed. Trained soldiers following a final command. They ran back the way they came, fighting through machines that were now actively trying to stop them. 2 made it to the ship. 1 died buying time for the others. The Defiance launched on failing engines, limping away from the facility. Jiwoo sat beside the Singularity device, protecting it as machines closed in. They came cautiously, still trying to understand her. She was dying, radiation poisoned and exhausted, but she stayed conscious through will alone. She had a job to do. Ambassador Velkara's voice came through her communication system. Commander, you need to evacuate now. You've done enough. Jiwoo smiled. Nobody could see it, but she smiled that predator's smile one last time. No, Ambassador. Now I make sure. That's what humans do. The machines reached her position. They surrounded her, analyzing, trying to comprehend this creature that sacrificed itself for others. Jiwoo looked at them calmly. You wanted to understand humans? Here's your lesson. We're stubborn. We don't quit, and we protect those who can't protect themselves. She activated the detonation sequence manually, overriding the timer. Tell humanity this. Not bad for an atrocious species. Tell the Council you're welcome. The singularity charge activated. Space-time twisted in on itself, creating a point of infinite density for exactly 3 seconds. Everything within 10 light minutes collapsed inward. The facility, the machines, Jiwoo. All of it compressed to nothing and then vanished as the singularity evaporated. The machine's threat ended in an instant. The galaxy was saved. 6 months later, the Galactic Council held a memorial service. Humanity was granted full membership with unanimous approval. The ceremony felt hollow to the human delegates. They had wanted acceptance, but not at this price. A monument was erected at Council headquarters. Simple stone with 5,000 names carved into it. At the top, a bronze relief of Han Jiwoo's face captured in that final smile. The inscription read in every Council language, "They called us Atrocious. We called it Tuesday." Ambassador Kim Hyun gave the dedication speech. She kept it brief, knowing Jiwoo would have hated lengthy ceremonies. Fleet Commander Jiwoo told the Council 5 years ago that they hadn't seen anything yet. She was right. You saw humans at our most desperate, our most driven. You saw us fight and die to protect people who had rejected us. But that's not the full picture of humanity. Hyun paused, looking at the assembled representatives. You still haven't seen everything. You haven't seen humans at peace, building instead of fighting, creating instead of destroying. You haven't seen what we'll accomplish now that we're part of the galactic community. That's the next chapter. She smiled, and it was warm, hopeful, touched with sadness but looking forward. Jiwoo and the others on the Defiance gave everything so that chapter could be written. We're going to make sure their sacrifice meant something. We're going to show you what humanity can do when we're not just surviving but thriving, when we're not just fighting threats but building futures. The memorial ended. Delegates departed. Life continued because that's what Jiwoo would have wanted. The galaxy was saved, humanity was accepted, and the future was wide open. On Earth, a young girl named Lee Minji studied the story of the Defiance in school. She was 8 years old, born after the quarantine, too young to remember when humans were feared and rejected. She raised her hand. Teacher, Minji asked, were they scared? The people on the Defiance? Her teacher, a veteran who had served with Jiwoo, nodded. Yes, they were terrified. Fear is natural. Then why did they go? The teacher smiled. Because being scared never stopped humans from doing what needed to be done. Remember that, Minji. When something is right, you do it even if you're afraid. Especially if you're afraid. That's what makes us human. Minji nodded, absorbing the lesson. Someday she would join the Space Force. Someday she would serve on a ship named Defiance 2. Someday she would face her own impossible situation and remember this moment, this lesson, because that's what humans did. They remembered. They honored. They continued. And when the universe said something couldn't be done, they smiled and said, "Watch me."